Greetings, this is Jim Lindsay. In this lesson, I'll be talking to you about the design principle proximity. It's presented in Chapter 2 of our textbook over design, the non-designer's design book, and let's get into it. All right, this design principle proximity is the following. This is the idea that you're supposed to take away from this chapter. Groups of related items should be placed together on the page or on the screen. Again, groups of related items should be placed together. I have some images I want to share with you to help communicate this point. You have a bunch of flamingos there and on the screen in front of you. You know, the flamingos hang out together. They're related things, are all birds of the same flock, and they're all hanging out there together. That's what we're going for when we desktop publish documents, when we put together a newsletter or a brochure or a business card or any type of document. Proximity can be a very effective technique for communicating information to the viewer. And so let me show you some pictures of people to communicate something about proximity. All right, this is something I frequently do in class when I'm teaching this, and I hope it will translate to the online version as well. But as you look at this picture, look at the bench. There's this looks like it's in the city somewhere, and you have 4 people seated on a bench, and 2 of those 4 people, as you look at this photo, seem to be affiliated with somebody, with each other somehow. And I would ask you in a class, hey, who in this picture appears to be, somehow affiliated? And everybody would, it's really easy to look at it and go, oh, well, it's the 2 ladies in the middle. And go, yeah, obviously, it's the 2 ladies right here. And my next question would be, well, why do those 2 ladies appear to be affiliated? And you go, well, they're facing one another, they're talking, it looks like they're interacting in some way. Whereas you have these people on the outside, you have this man over here and this lady over here, they're facing in the opposite direction. They look like they, if they could get any more space between themselves and the 2 ladies in the middle, they would do it. And so that proximity of these 2, facing one another, engaging with one another, interacting with one another, that sort of communicates to a viewer that, hey, these 2 things are related. So let me show you another. Here's my next picture for you. Now, this one makes me laugh. I think it's funny. You have, again, 4 people on a bench. That's kind of the theme here. And which 2 people of the 4 appear to be affiliated? Well, it's obviously these 2 over here that are smooching with one another. And so, it's funny to see this woman going, ooh, gross, and for whatever reason she's thinking it's gross, and this guy looks like he wishes he could be anywhere else on the planet. But, these 2, because of their proximity, because of their interaction with one another, appear to be part of a group, and that's important. We want to take bits of information or data that's on our page and group it if those bits of data are related to one another, just like you have these 2 smooching right here, and you have these 2 ladies talking to each other on the bench. Okay, let me give you a desktop published example. This is coming from in your book, which is again Chapter 2. Bear with me one second, let me get there. We're talking about pages 16, 17, this neighborhood. This is a business card, and we'll look at this example many times over as we look at the different principles, and she'll start to employ more and more of these principles on the card as we go. And so by the end of it, you get a really good looking business card. But this first one is this first attempt, or the first draft of this card. As you look at this, just take a quick second, take a look at it for just a second, then turn away. And let me ask you, who is this business card for? Who is the person that the business card is for? And it's hard to, when you first look at it, that's hard to know, because the prominent part of this card is like the name of the business as opposed to the name of the person. If I asked you, as you just take a 2-second glance at that, what street is this place on? Again, the same sort of thing. It's hard to recall that just from that 2-second glance. And so if we were to employ this idea of proximity to group similar bits of information, we could probably make a more effective document. Let me show you what that might look like. And this is that same information And if you took like a 2-second glance at this one, you'd see, oh, this is for Ralph Doyster. And the Mermaid Tavern is still really large at the top. And if this is a business card trying to communicate the business as opposed to the individual, maybe that would be appropriate. If you're trying to promote the individual, you'd probably want to flip-flop those as far as the emphasis on the name of the place right now. But through this proximity, through placing the name of the location and the name of the person who the card is supposed to be for, as well as taking all of the address information, putting it all in the same spot on a card, you immediately get a better understanding of what this card is supposed to communicate to the viewer. So that's like the initial lesson that you get about proximity from this chapter. Okay, so let's move on to another example. And this, what you're looking at here, is what we call a masthead. And this would basically be at the top of a newsletter or a newspaper. What this masthead is supposed to communicate is the name of the publication, as well as when it was created, any sort of taglines that go along with it, as well as like logos and stuff like that. And you consistently place a masthead at the top of your document. So through time, over the years, people that subscribe to your paper or read your document, as soon as they see that masthead, and masthead basically is MASTHEAD, just like on a boat, that they would come to recognize, oh, this is the New York Times or the Courier Journal or the Shakespeare papers. And so that's the purpose of the masthead. It's supposed to help you brand your document. This is the beginning, or the before picture. If we were to rework this using the proximity principle, it might look something like this. Now, rarely are you shown an example in this book where more than one principle is being employed. In this case, we're also starting to see some contrast, and we'll get to contrast in a later chapter. But as we go from the initial masthead to the second masthead, you'll see that proximity has been used to better group information about this document. So in the second example, you'll see, for example, the tagline stands out much better. Amusing, peculiar, educative. That's the tagline for this Shakespeare Papers newsletter. And that shows up much more effectively in this second example than it does in the first one. And in the first one, it's up here in the corner, and you're like, well, what does that mean? And so that's proximity at work there. Also, the information about when did this publication come out, that is much better communicated with this second example of the masthead compared to the first, because in the first you have like the month, the volume and issue number, as well as the Sweet Swan Society information all being sort of spread out all over the page. It's a lot better displayed here. And so that's a second example of proximity. So as you start to make your documents, think about things that go together and place those physically on the page next to one another or closer to one another than to other things. And in doing so, your viewer will immediately, or your reader will immediately understand that those things are supposed to be associated with one another. All right, let's finish with two more examples. And this, what you're seeing on the page is the first of the last two examples. In this one, this is a document, a flyer, that would be stapled to a telephone pole or on a bulletin board, maybe taped to a door in a building, and there's a club that some sort of like poetry club, literature club, that has a reading schedule and in this case the reading schedule is for the winter. And the same information, this is what I hope you'll take away from this too, the same exact information is on the left as on the right. And so as you look at these two examples from the left to the right, and this is on pages, if you look in your text, at this point we're on pages 20 and 21. The implementation of these principles in the second example, it's very stark that that's very effective at better communicating information. So again, same information from the left to the right. This is a reading schedule for the winter, and as you look at the one at the right, on the right, if we were in a classroom and say, hey, what are the 3 readings going to be for this winter? And as you look at the one on the right, you go, oh, it's going to be for Cybele, the Winter's Tale, and the Twelfth Night. As opposed to if you look at the one on the left, it's really kind of hard to see what those are going to be. They're there as you look. Like there's Cybele right there. There's the Winter's Tale, and then the third one is in here too. The Twelfth Night is down here. But by putting this stuff in groups, you have information about each one of these readings together with the title, and also it's starting to use contrast as well, repetition. These are you're starting to see those principles come to light in here, but we can talk about those a little bit later. But this is I think a really effective example of how using proximity to group similar pieces of information together on a page communicates to the viewer that that's what this is about. We can disregard this part about the Mermaid Tavern down here, just pretend like that's not there. So that's that example right there. Well, I take that back. The Mermaid Tavern is the location of where this is going to take place, and so there's the Mermaid Tavern's ticket price and other stuff like that, but it's down at the bottom of the page, so you know that's separate information than the actual readings themselves, which are up in here. So again, pages 20 and 21, take a look at those in your text, please. Okay, and your last example of proximity here, and there are more than I'm showing you. As you flip through the pages of the book, there are many more examples than I'm showing. I'm just trying to pull out some, because I don't want these lessons to be super long. I want them to be short enough that you'll want to listen to them. But please make sure you're looking in a book, because there's good information in there that I'm not showing you, that will also communicate the lessons of these design principles. So this is our last example for proximity that I'm going to show you. This is a postcard which somebody would receive in the mail. And as you look at this, it looks like a typewriter threw up on the page, like, what is this, And this example reworked looks something like this. And what you're seeing here is that, this is for a dance studio, and they teach lots of different styles of dance. And so, this second example is much clearer than this one as far as the information. Again, the information is the same from example 1 to example 2. But the way that this one has used proximity to take these styles of dance and put those together in the middle of the page, where here's what you're going to do. You're going to learn to dance at that location, these styles of dance, and there's some more information about whether you need a partner or getting prizes and things like that. So that's the last example I wanted to share with you. And so what have we talked about? Well, we have talked about this principle of proximity in this lesson. And again, this comes from chapter 2 in your design textbook. Please make sure you've read it. Contact me with questions.